Hello everyone, my name is Amara Okafor. Before I begin my story, please like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories that might help you avoid the heartbreak I've experienced. What I'm about to tell you changed my entire life, and might save yours too. I was lying next to my husband of 22 years when he whispered, "I love you, Blessing," in my ear. My name is Amara. Blessing is his 29-year-old secretary. In that moment, my entire world collapsed around me. The man I had given my best years to, the father of my 3 children and the keeper of my heart since I was 18, had just shattered everything with a single whispered name. But what happened next was even worse. When David realized his mistake, his eyes went wide with panic. Instead of apologizing or explaining himself, he grabbed my wrists so tightly they bruised and begged. "Please don't tell her. Please, Amara. She can't know about us. She thinks we're exclusive." Exclusive. The word echoed in my head like a death sentence. Not only was my husband cheating, but he was in a committed relationship with this woman. A relationship he was protecting more fiercely than our marriage. I'm 45 years old. I immigrated to this country from Nigeria with nothing but hope and determination. I worked 2 jobs while getting my nursing degree. I built a beautiful home and raised 3 wonderful children. I thought I had built an unshakable life with a man who respected me. I was wrong about everything. This is the story of how I discovered the extent of my husband's betrayal, how I found my strength, and how I finally got justice. What I discovered went far beyond a simple affair. It involved hundreds of thousands of dollars, multiple secret lives, and a conspiracy that nearly destroyed me. But I fought back, and I won. 25 years ago, I met David at university. I was studying nursing, and he was in business school. We were both children of immigrants, me from Nigeria and him from Ghana. We bonded over our shared experiences, our ambitious dreams, and our love of our heritage. David was charming, intelligent, and driven. He had big plans to start his own medical equipment supply company, promising that one day we would be wealthy beyond our wildest dreams. I believed him. I believed in him. We married soon after graduation. I worked night shifts at the hospital to support us while David built his business from the ground up. Those early years were hard but beautiful. We lived in a tiny apartment, saved every penny, and dreamed of our future together. By the time I was 30, everything we had worked for started coming together. David's business took off. We bought our dream house in an upscale neighborhood, a beautiful 5-bedroom home worth $450,000. We had 3 children, Kofi, now 20, Nia, 18, and Kwame, 15. I became the director of nursing at the city's largest hospital, earning a comfortable salary of $95,000 per year. Our combined annual income reached $320,000. We had $225,000 in retirement savings, $75,000 in our children's college funds, and a vacation property at the lake worth $180,000. We took luxury vacations twice a year. David bought me a Mercedes for my 40th birthday. We hosted elaborate parties for our large extended family and our circle of successful friends. From the outside, we were living the immigrant success story. We had achieved the American dream. Our children were thriving academically. Our marriage was the envy of our social circle. David and I were seen as the perfect power couple, successful in our careers and devoted to each other. "You're so lucky," my friends would tell me. "David is such a faithful husband. He adores you." I believed them. I believed him. I trusted completely. That was my first mistake. There were small signs, of course. Looking back, I can see them clearly. The late nights at the office, the business trips that grew more frequent, the gradual emotional distance. But I made excuses for everything. David was building his empire for us. He was working hard for our family. The occasional coldness was just stress from work. "Business is tough right now," he would say. "The competition is fierce. I need to stay focused." I supported him unconditionally. When he needed $50,000 from our savings for business expansion, I signed the papers without question. When he started keeping his phone locked and taking calls in another room, I respected his privacy. When he suggested I shouldn't attend certain business functions because they would bore me, I stayed home. My friend Fatima tried to warn me once. We were having coffee on my patio when she carefully said, "Amara, I saw David downtown yesterday. He was having lunch with a young woman. They seemed close." That must be his new secretary, I replied confidently. Blessing. He mentioned hiring her recently. He's mentoring her. Fatima gave me a look that I now recognize as pity, but she said nothing more. I was so sure of my marriage, so confident in my husband's character, that I dismissed her concern without a second thought. Then came our 22nd anniversary. David surprised me with diamond earrings and a romantic dinner at an exclusive restaurant. He looked into my eyes across the table and said, "These 22 years with you have been the best of my life. You're the only woman I've ever truly loved." I believed him. Just 2 weeks later, he called me by another woman's name in our marital bed, and my perfect world began to unravel. The morning after David called me Blessing, I sat at our kitchen island staring at my coffee, trying to process what had happened. After begging me not to tell her about us, David had launched into a series of contradictory explanations. First, he claimed he was just tired and misspoke. Then he said Blessing was having problems with her boyfriend, and he was concerned about her as a mentor. Finally, he said he'd taken sleep medication and wasn't fully aware of what he was saying. "It meant nothing, Amara," he insisted. "You're overreacting. After all we've built together, how can you question me over something so trivial?" He left for work early that morning, kissing my forehead as if nothing had happened. But something inside me had shifted. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't believe him. I called the hospital and took a rare personal day. Then I sat at our home computer and stared at the screen. Was I really going to invade my husband's privacy? Was I going to become the stereotype of the suspicious, paranoid wife? "This isn't who we are," I whispered to myself. "We trust each other." But the words, "she thinks we're exclusive," kept echoing in my head. With shaking hands, I logged into our shared family email account, an account we rarely used except for household matters. There was nothing unusual there. Next, I checked our phone bill online. David and I were on a family plan. I scrolled through the call logs and found a number that appeared dozens of times, often late at night or early in the morning when David claimed to be working. The calls sometimes lasted over an hour. I wrote down the number but didn't call it. Not yet. Instead, I went to our home office and opened the filing cabinet where we kept our financial records. David handled most of our finances, but I had always trusted him completely. Now I began methodically reviewing our bank statements from the past year. What I found made my stomach churn. Regular cash withdrawals of $2,000 to $3,000 that David had never mentioned. Credit card charges for hotels in our own city, not business trip destinations. Expensive restaurant bills on evenings when he told me he was working late. Charges from jewelry stores around Valentine's Day and in August, not near my birthday or our anniversary. August. I suddenly remembered that when Fatima first mentioned seeing David with his secretary, he had said he'd recently hired her. I searched through more statements and found the first restaurant charge that didn't make sense was from last August, 9 months ago. I sat back in the chair, my heart pounding. This wasn't a recent infatuation or a momentary lapse. This was a sustained, deliberate deception. My phone rang, startling me. It was my daughter Nia calling from university. "Hi, Mom. Just checking in. How was the anniversary dinner? Dad said he was taking you somewhere amazing." I forced my voice to sound normal. "It was lovely, sweetheart. How are your classes going?" We chatted for a few minutes about her studies, her roommate, her plans for the summer. As we talked, I continued looking through the financial records, and my eye caught something odd. There were regular transfers, $2,500 each month for the past 6 months, to an account I didn't recognize. "Mom? Are you listening?" Nia asked. "I'm sorry, honey. I'm a bit distracted with work stuff." After we hung up, I examined the transfers more closely. They were labeled business development, but they weren't going to any of David's known business accounts. I wrote down the account number. Just then, I heard the garage door open. David was home, hours earlier than usual. I quickly returned the statements to the filing cabinet and closed the office door behind me. "Amara?" he called out. "Are you home?" I walked into the kitchen, my heart racing but my face calm. "I took a personal day." David set down his briefcase and loosened his tie. I noticed he seemed tense, his forehead creased with worry lines I hadn't seen before. "Are you still upset about last night?" he asked cautiously. "No," I lied. "I just needed a day off. He visibly relaxed. Good, because it was nothing. I've been under a lot of pressure at work, and how is Blessing doing? I interrupted, watching his face carefully. A flicker of something, fear, crossed his expression before he composed himself. She's fine, efficient. Why do you ask? Just curious about your staff, I said casually. You rarely talk about them. David walked to the refrigerator and took out a bottle of water. Not much to talk about. Business is business. You know, I said, I was thinking I should visit your office someday. In all these years, I've only been there a handful of times. The water bottle paused halfway to his lips. That's not necessary. It's just a boring office. Still, I'd like to see where my husband spends most of his time. David set down the water and approached me, placing his hands on my shoulders. Amara, what's really going on? This isn't like you. I looked into the eyes of this man I had loved for half my life and saw a stranger. Nothing's going on. I just thought it would be nice. How about this weekend I take you shopping instead? He offered. You can buy whatever you want. A new dress, some jewelry, whatever makes you happy. It was so transparent. A bribe to keep me away from his office, away from Blessing. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that my husband was having an affair, but I sensed there was even more to uncover. That sounds nice, I said, forcing a smile. David kissed my cheek, relief evident in his posture. I need to make some calls. Work emergency. I'll be in my study. As soon as he closed his study door, I heard him speaking in hushed tones. I moved quietly down the hallway and stood outside, listening. I can't meet today. No, she's home. I think she suspects something. I don't know, she's asking about you. Just lay low for a few days. The transfer went through, right? Good. I love you too. I tiptoed away, my mind racing. I needed help. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before confronting David. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. There was money involved. Possibly a lot of money. I went to our bedroom and called Fatima. I need to talk to you, I whispered. Not on the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? Amara, what's wrong? You sound strange. Please, Fatima. It's important. Of course, she said without hesitation. My house, 10 a.m. Richard will be at golf. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of our bed. The bed where just hours ago my husband had called me by his lover's name. I looked around our master bedroom with its custom drapes that I had selected so carefully, the family photos on the walls, the matching nightstands where we each kept our reading glasses and favorite books. 22 years of marriage. 3 beautiful children, a home built with love and sacrifice. All of it now felt like an elaborate stage set. Beautiful, but hollow, hiding something ugly behind its perfect facade. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I would not confront David yet. I would not let my emotions drive me to act rashly. Instead, I would become the detective of my own life. I would uncover every lie, document every deception, and only then would I decide what to do. A strange calm settled over me. The initial shock and pain were still there, but now they were accompanied by a steely determination that I had never felt before. David had underestimated me. He thought I was too trusting, too naive to discover his betrayal. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. The next morning, I told David I was meeting Fatima for brunch. He barely looked up from his phone. Have fun, he said distractedly. I'll be at the office all day. Big proposal due Monday. I studied his face, noting how easily the lies came to him now. Had it always been this way? Had I been blind for 22 years? Or was this a recent transformation? I might go shopping afterward, I added, testing him. Now he looked up, smiling. Good idea. Use the black credit card. The black card. Our premium credit card with the highest limit. Another bribe. Another attempt to distract me with material things while he continued his deception. Thanks, I said, kissing his cheek as I had done thousands of mornings before. The familiar gesture now felt like a performance, an act in a play where neither of us was being truthful. Fatima's house was a 15-minute drive from ours, a beautiful home in the same upscale neighborhood. Like me, she had come to America as a young woman, though from Kenya rather than Nigeria. We had met at a cultural celebration 20 years ago and had been best friends ever since. She had been there for the birth of all my children, and I had supported her through her divorce 5 years ago. As soon as she opened the door, she knew something was terribly wrong. "Amara," she gasped, pulling me inside. "What happened?" In her comfortable living room, with cups of strong African tea between us, I told her everything: the whispered name, the pleading, the financial discoveries, the phone conversation I had overheard. Fatima listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she set down her cup and took my hands in hers. "I was afraid of this," she said quietly. "The woman I saw him with, she was young, beautiful, dressed expensively. They were not acting like boss and employee, Amara." He had his hand on her lower back. "They were laughing intimately." "Why didn't you tell me more clearly?" I asked, a hint of accusation in my voice. Fatima's eyes filled with tears. "Because you weren't ready to hear it. You've always been so certain of David, so proud of your perfect marriage. I tried to hint, to make you question, but you shut it down immediately." She was right. I had been willfully blind. "What do I do now?" I asked. Fatima's expression hardened. "First, you need to protect yourself. Financially, legally, emotionally. I'm not sure I'm ready to end my marriage," I admitted. "I'm not saying that's the only option, but you need to know exactly what you're dealing with. The monthly transfers, the secret phone calls. This might be more than just an affair, Amara." She went to her desk and returned with a business card. "This is Michael Osei. He's a private investigator. He helped me during my divorce when James was hiding assets." I stared at the card. Hiring a private investigator seemed so extreme, so final. But then I thought of David's whispered, "I love you too," on the phone. The $2,500 monthly transfers. The hotels in our own city. "I'll call him," I said, tucking the card into my purse. "Good. And I have another suggestion," Fatima continued. "My cousin works at First National Bank. If you get me the account number for those transfers, she might be able to tell us who owns the account." "Isn't that illegal?" I asked, surprised. Fatima shrugged. "Probably, but family looks out for family, and you are my sister in all but blood. Give me the number." I hesitated only briefly before writing it down for her. The old Amara, trusting, rule-following, proper, was fading away, replaced by a woman who needed answers more than she needed to follow convention. Before leaving Fatima's house, I made 2 decisions. First, I would meet with the private investigator. Second, I would continue to act normally around David while gathering evidence. If my suspicions were correct, confronting him too early would only give him time to hide the truth. That afternoon, I called Michael Osei from a coffee shop parking lot, using the prepaid phone Fatima had given me. For privacy, she had insisted. "David might check your call logs." The investigator's voice was deep and professional. He asked pointed questions about what I knew so far and what I suspected. "Financial infidelity often accompanies sexual infidelity," he explained, "especially in high-income marriages like yours. I'll need retainer of $5,000 to begin." The amount made me flinch, but I thought of the black credit card in my wallet, the one David had encouraged me to use just that morning. "I can provide that," I said. "How soon can you start?" "I can meet you tomorrow to get photos of your husband and any other details." Then we begin immediately. We arranged to meet at a restaurant far from our neighborhood. As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. After years of living in comfortable certainty, I was now stepping into the unknown. When I returned home that evening, David was waiting with a surprise. "I got us reservations at Vincenzo's," he announced. His smile seemed genuine, his eyes warm as they swept over me. "You deserve a nice evening out." Vincenzo's was the most expensive Italian restaurant in the city, a place we usually visited only for special occasions. Another bribe, another distraction. "That sounds lovely," I said, matching his smile with one of my own. "Let me change clothes." Over pasta and wine, David was attentive and charming, the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago. He asked about my day, laughed at my stories about Fatima, held my hand across the table. If I hadn't heard him whispering to his lover just the day before, I might have believed this performance. "I've been thinking," he said as dessert arrived. "We should plan a second honeymoon. Maybe Paris in the fall when the crowds are smaller, just the 2 of us." That sounds wonderful, I replied, wondering if he was already planning similar trips with Blessing. You're the love of my life, Amara, David said, his eyes meeting mine. I don't say it enough, but it's true. Everything I've built, everything I've achieved, it's all been for you and our children. In that moment, I almost broke. I almost confronted him right there in the restaurant, demanding to know how he could lie so convincingly, how he could look into my eyes and declare his love while betraying me so completely. But I held my composure. I love you too, I said, the words feeling hollow on my tongue. Later that night, as David slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about my marriage. If the affair was all there was, a middle-aged man's infatuation with a younger woman, perhaps we could recover. People rebuilt marriages after infidelity all the time. We had 22 years together, 3 children, a life that by most measures was enviable, but the financial discoveries troubled me deeply. Why was he transferring money each month? What were the large cash withdrawals for? Was he supporting Blessing, planning to leave me, or was something even more sinister happening? I turned on my side, watching my husband's peaceful, sleeping face. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. The next morning, I met Michael Osei at a quiet booth in the back of a chain restaurant 30 minutes from our home. He was a serious man in his 50s, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I provided him with recent photos of David from my phone, the license plate numbers of his vehicles, his work address, and his usual schedule. I also shared the mysterious account number and details of the financial irregularities I had found. Mrs. Okafor, based on what you've told me, I recommend comprehensive surveillance, Michael said. That means following your husband, documenting his activities, investigating this Blessing person, and looking into the financial aspects. It will be expensive, probably $15,000 to $20,000 total. I swallowed hard at the figure. I can access that much, but I'll need to be careful about how I withdraw it. Use cash advances from different ATMs, not your usual ones, he advised. Small amounts that won't trigger alerts, and purchase a new secure phone for our communications. As I wrote him a check for the retainer, drawn on a personal account David rarely monitored, Michael studied my face. You seem very composed. Mrs. Okafor, most clients in your situation are emotional, angry. I met his gaze steadily. I come from a long line of strong women, Mr. Osei. In my village, my grandmother was known for her wisdom and patience. She used to say, "When hunting a lion, don't roar before your spear is ready." He nodded with approval. Wise grandmother. We'll have preliminary findings within a week. That week was one of the strangest of my life. On the surface, everything was normal. I went to work at the hospital, managing my department with my usual efficiency. I cooked David's favorite meals. I spoke with our children on the phone, hearing about their studies and activities. I even made love with my husband twice, mechanical, dutiful encounters that left me feeling hollow afterward. Meanwhile, beneath this veneer of normalcy, I was transforming. I opened a new email account that David knew nothing about. I purchased a secure phone as Michael had suggested. I withdrew cash in small amounts from different ATMs across the city. I began documenting every unusual expense I could find, creating a timeline of David's deception. On Friday night, as David and I were watching a movie in our living room, my secure phone vibrated in my pocket. I excused myself to use the bathroom and read the text from Michael. Preliminary findings ready. Meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m., same location. That night, I barely slept. Whatever Michael had discovered, I sensed it would change everything. As dawn broke, I watched David sleeping beside me and wondered if this would be one of the last peaceful mornings in our marriage. The restaurant was nearly empty when I arrived at 1:55 p.m. Michael Osei was already there, a thick folder on the table in front of him. His expression was grim. "Mrs. Okafor," he greeted me formally. "I appreciate your punctuality. What did you find?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. "It's extensive," he replied, opening the folder. "First, the affair. Your husband is indeed involved with his secretary, Blessing Mensa, age 29. They've been in a relationship for approximately 10 months. They meet 3 to 4 times weekly, usually at her apartment in Riverside Towers, occasionally at the Westgate Hotel downtown." He slid several photographs across the table. David and Blessing entering her luxury apartment building, the two of them kissing in his car, having dinner at an expensive restaurant, walking hand in hand in a park on the other side of town. She lives at Riverside Towers? I asked, my voice tight. Those were premium apartments starting at $3,500 per month. Michael nodded. Penthouse level. Monthly rent approximately $5,000. Leased in her name, but the payments come from an LLC called New Dawn Enterprises. I recognized the name with a jolt. That's a subsidiary of David's company. He told me it was for international consulting. It appears to be a shell company, Mrs. Okafor. According to my financial investigator, New Dawn Enterprises exists primarily to channel funds. The monthly transfers you identified, $2,500 each month, go to Blessing's personal account, but that's only part of the financial picture. He turned several pages in his report. Your husband has a separate bank account you don't know about, containing approximately $380,000. He's been systematically moving funds from your joint business accounts into this personal account for at least 3 years. Additionally, he recently purchased a vacation property in Ghana, beachfront, valued at approximately $450,000. The room seemed to tilt around me. Ghana? He never mentioned buying property there. The property is not in his name. It's registered to New Dawn Enterprises, but he has been there. 3 times in the past 6 months, in fact, always accompanied by Ms. Mensah. I stared at the documents, trying to process what I was seeing. This went far beyond an affair. This was a systematic financial deception, a hidden life built parallel to the one he shared with me. There's more, Michael said quietly. We looked into Ms. Mensah's background. She's actually Ghanaian, not Nigerian, as your husband might have told you. She came to the U.S. 5 years ago on a student visa. And she's not just your husband's employee and lover. According to documents we've obtained, they were married in a traditional ceremony in Ghana 4 months ago. I couldn't breathe. Married? My husband had married another woman? That's not legally binding in the U.S., Michael added quickly. But it appears to be recognized in Ghana. The property purchase appears to be part of their future plans. According to electronic communications we've accessed, they've discussed relocating there within the next year. My mind flashed to the Paris trip David had suggested, our second honeymoon. That meant to be a farewell gesture before he disappeared to Ghana with his new, younger wife and a fortune built with our shared resources? One final thing, Michael said, turning to the last page of his report. Ms. Mensah is approximately 4 months pregnant. The world went silent. I felt as if I were underwater, Michael's voice reaching me from a great distance. Pregnant. My husband had not only betrayed me with another woman, married her in secret and hidden our money. He was starting a new family. Mrs. Okafor? Would you like some water? Michael's concerned voice broke through my shock. I shook my head. No, continue, please. He seemed relieved by my composure. Based on intercepted communications, your husband plans to liquidate several major assets within the next month. He recently inquired about selling the vacation property at the lake without a cosigner, meaning without your signature. He can't do that, I said automatically. My name is on the deed. Correct, which is why he's been unsuccessful so far. However, there are indications he's exploring other options, including forging your signature or creating documents that would remove you from the title. The methodical nature of David's betrayal was staggering. This wasn't an impulsive affair or a midlife crisis. This was a calculated exit strategy, years in the making. What are my options? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Michael closed the folder. That depends on what you want, Mrs. Okafor. If you wish to salvage the marriage, we could present him with this evidence and see if he's willing to end the relationship with Ms. Mensah. However, given the extent of the deception, that's not an option, I interrupted. Not anymore, he nodded. Then I recommend immediate legal action. You need to protect your assets before you can move any more money. I can refer you to an excellent attorney who specializes in high-asset divorces. Yes, I said, and I want copies of everything you've found. Every photo, every document, every bank record. Of course, I've prepared a complete duplicate for you. He handed me a USB drive and a sealed envelope. The digital files are here, and I've included contact information for attorney Sarah Chen. She's discreet, aggressive, and very good at what she does. As I stood to leave, Michael hesitated, then said, "Mrs. Okafor, in my 15 years doing this work, I've seen hundreds of cases of infidelity and financial deception. Yours is among the most extensive." I'm sorry. His compassion nearly broke me, but I held myself together. "Thank you, Mr. Osei, for your thoroughness and your kindness." Outside in my car, I finally allowed myself a moment of pure, unrestrained emotion. I screamed until my throat was raw. I pounded the steering wheel until my hands hurt. I wept until there were no tears left. Then I started the car and drove to the office of Sarah Chen, attorney at law. Sarah Chen's office was minimalist and elegant, much like the woman herself. In her early 40s, she radiated competence and control. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Mrs. Okafor, we need to move quickly. Based on what you've told me and the evidence you've provided, your husband is planning to leave the country with substantial marital assets. We need to freeze accounts, file for divorce, and seek emergency orders from the court." "How soon can we do this?" I asked. "I can have paperwork ready by Monday morning, but there's something important we need to discuss." She folded her hands on her desk. "Do you want to confront your husband before we file, or would you prefer he be served without warning?" I considered this carefully. The wounded part of me wanted to confront David immediately, to see his face when he realized I knew everything. But the strategic part of me, the part that was growing stronger every day, recognized the danger in tipping my hand too early. No warnings, I decided. I need to protect my children's future and what's rightfully mine. If David knows I'm aware of his plans, he might accelerate them. Sarah nodded approvingly. "I agree. Now, I suggest you return home and act normally for the weekend. Don't withdraw large sums, don't move assets, don't give any indication that you know. On Monday, we'll file for divorce and seek emergency orders freezing all accounts. We'll have him served at his office." "What about Blessing?" I asked. "Should she be named in the divorce?" "Absolutely. As his paramour and the recipient of marital funds, she's an essential part of this case." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "This won't be easy, Mrs. Okafor. Divorces involving hidden assets and extramarital relationships rarely are. But based on what you've shown me, you have an extremely strong case." I left her office with a retainer agreement and a plan. For the first time since David had whispered another woman's name, I felt a sense of control returning. I wasn't just a victim of betrayal. I was a woman preparing to fight for justice. The weekend passed in a surreal blur. I cooked David's favorite Nigerian dishes. I watched movies with him on our sofa. I discussed our son Kwame's upcoming school sports tournament. I was the perfect wife, attentive, loving, unsuspecting. All while knowing that on Monday, his carefully constructed double life would begin to crumble. On Sunday night, David received a call that he took in his study. When he emerged, he looked troubled. "I need to fly to Chicago tomorrow," he announced. "Supply chain issue with a major client. I might be gone for a few days." Chicago, not Ghana, not a meeting with Blessing. For a moment I wondered if Michael's investigation had uncovered everything. Then I remembered the thoroughness of his report, the photographs, the documented money trail. "I'll drive you to the airport," I offered. "No need," David said quickly. "I'll take my car to the long-term parking. My flight's very early." I kissed him goodnight, knowing it might be the last normal moment between us. "Safe travels," I said, the irony of the phrase not lost on me. The next morning, David left before dawn. I waited until 8:30 a.m., then called Sarah Chen. "He's gone to Chicago," I reported, or at least that's what he told me. "Perfect timing," she replied. "The papers are ready. I'll have him served at his office when he returns. And meanwhile, we'll file for emergency orders freezing the accounts today. Can you come sign the documents now? I'm on my way." At the courthouse, I signed multiple legal documents, divorce petitions, financial affidavits, emergency motions. As I wrote my name on each one, I felt both grief and relief. 22 years of marriage, ending in a series of signatures. "The emergency hearing is scheduled for Wednesday," Sarah informed me. "The judge will likely grant our motion to freeze assets. After that, we begin the discovery phase. Although thanks to your private investigator, we already have most of what we need." "What about the property in Ghana?" I asked. "And the money he's already moved?" We'll file internationally to block any transfers of the Ghana property. As for the hidden money, once it's located through official discovery, the court will likely order its return to the marital estate. He won't get away with this, Mrs. Okafor. That evening, I returned to our beautiful home with a strange sense of detachment. I walked through the rooms I had decorated with such care over the years. The living room with its African art pieces we'd collected, the kitchen where I'd prepared countless family meals, the family photos lining the hallway, 22 years of memories, all tainted now by David's deception. I decided to pack some essentials. Sarah had advised me to consider staying elsewhere once David was served with the divorce papers. Men can become volatile when confronted with their own wrongdoing, she had warned, especially men who've been living double lives. As I was selecting clothes from my closet, my phone rang. Our daughter, Nia. Mom? Is everything okay? Dad just called me sounding weird. My heart raced. What do you mean, weird? What did he say? He asked if I'd spoken to you today, and if you seemed upset about anything. He said he was worried about you acting not yourself lately. I told him I hadn't noticed anything when we talked yesterday. Mom, what's going on? I took a deep breath. I had hoped to protect our children from this ugliness a bit longer, at least until the initial legal proceedings were underway. But David was already laying groundwork, attempting to paint me as unstable, just as Sarah had warned he might. Naya, sweetheart, there are some serious problems between your father and me. I was hoping to talk to you and your brothers together, but things are moving quickly. Can you video chat tonight? Around 9? Mom, you're scaring me. I know, baby. I'm sorry. I promise I'll explain everything. After hanging up, I texted both my sons with the same request for a video call. Then I continued packing, adding important documents and family heirlooms I couldn't bear to leave behind. At 7:30 p.m., my secure phone rang. Michael Osi, Mrs. Okafor. I thought you should know that your husband is not in Chicago. Our surveillance confirms he's at Blessing Mensa's apartment. He flew to Detroit this morning, then doubled back. It appears he's aware something is happening. He's made multiple calls to your joint bank and investment accounts today. But the accounts are frozen now, correct? The major ones, yes. The emergency orders were granted this afternoon. But Mrs. Okafor, there's more. We've confirmed that Ms. Mensa purchased one-way tickets to Accra, Ghana for tomorrow evening. 2 tickets. They're running, I whispered. It appears so. I've informed Attorney Chen. She's preparing additional emergency motions to prevent your husband from leaving the country. As I hung up, the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw a police officer standing on my porch. My heart pounded as I opened the door. Mrs. Amara Okafor? The officer asked formally. Yes, I'm Officer Rodriguez. We received a welfare check request from your husband, David Okafor. He stated he's out of town and has been unable to reach you, and that you've been exhibiting concerning behavior recently. I nearly laughed at the audacity. As you can see, officer, I'm perfectly fine. My husband and I are having marital difficulties. In fact, I filed for divorce today. The officer's expression softened slightly. I understand. I'm required to complete this check, but it's clear you're not in distress. Actually, officer, I said, making a quick decision. I'd like to file a report. My husband has been hiding marital assets and has purchased tickets to leave the country tomorrow. I have court orders freezing our accounts due to his financial misconduct. I'm concerned he may attempt to enter our home and remove valuables. Officer Rodriguez looked surprised but took my statement professionally, providing me with a case number and advising me on how to request additional patrols near my home. After he left, I called Sarah Chen and updated her on both Michael's information and the police visit. He's laying groundwork to question your mental competence, she said grimly. Classic gaslighting, and planning to flee before being served. I'm filing additional emergency motions right now to prevent international travel. I also recommend you secure anything of value immediately. I've already started, I assured her. At 9 o'clock, I sat at my dining room table and initiated the video call with my 3 children. Their concerned faces appeared on my screen. Kofi from his university apartment, Nia from her dorm room, Kwame from a friend's house where he was spending the night. Mom, what's going on? Kofi asked immediately. Dad called me too. I looked at my beautiful children, my real legacy, the true wealth David and I had created together, and felt a profound sadness that they had to be hurt by this. But they deserved the truth. I need to tell you something difficult, I began. Your father and I are getting divorced. I filed the papers today. Their faces registered shock, confusion, disbelief. But why? Nia asked, her voice small. You guys are perfect together. Your father has been having an affair with his secretary, I said simply. It's been going on for at least 10 months. She's pregnant, and they conducted a traditional marriage ceremony in Ghana 4 months ago. The stunned silence was broken by Kwame's disbelieving, "What?" There's more, I continued gently. Dad has been hiding money, a lot of money, and planning to leave the country. He purchased property in Ghana without telling any of us. Kofi, always the analytical one, frowned deeply. How do you know all this, Mom? This sounds insane. I hired a private investigator after your father called me by his girlfriend's name in bed, I replied, watching their expressions shift from shock to disgust. Everything I'm telling you is documented with photographs, bank records, and flight information. Dad called you by another woman's name? Nia looked horrified. And then what? He begged me not to tell her about us, I said quietly. That's when I knew something was very wrong. For the next hour, I answered their questions as honestly as I could, while still sparing them the most painful details. Kofi was angry, demanding to confront his father immediately. Nia wept, struggling to reconcile the father she adored with the man I was describing. Kwame sat in stunned silence, occasionally asking clarifying questions. I'm telling you this because your father has already begun suggesting I'm mentally unstable, I explained. He even sent police to our house tonight for a welfare check. I need you to know the truth directly from me. We believe you, Mom, Kofi said firmly. The others nodded. What happens now? Nia asked tearfully. There will be legal proceedings. It might get messy. But I promise you this. I will protect what belongs to our family, including your educational funds and your future inheritance. Your father has already taken enough from us. After we ended the call, I sat alone in our dining room, emotionally exhausted but somehow lighter. Telling my children had been painful but necessary. David would not be able to manipulate them with lies now. I was just heading upstairs when I heard a key in the front door. I froze, my heart pounding. David was supposed to be in Chicago, or at Blessing's apartment. He wasn't expected home tonight. The door swung open and there he stood, his expression thunderous. What have you done? He demanded, stalking toward me. I stood my ground, though my knees felt weak. I don't know what you mean. Don't play games, Amara. The bank called me. All our accounts are frozen. My corporate cards are declined. And then Kofi calls me, screaming accusations about some woman named Blessing. What lies have you been telling our children? The audacity of his indignation was almost comical. Here was a man who had systematically betrayed me for years, asking what I had done. No lies, David. Only truths. Truths about your secretary Blessing, about your secret Ghanaian wedding ceremony, about her pregnancy, about the money you've been hiding, about your plans to leave tomorrow for Accra. His face drained of color. You had me investigated? Of course I did. After you called me Blessing in our bed and begged me not to tell her about us. Did you think I would just ignore that? Did you think I was that stupid? David's expression shifted, the anger giving way to calculation. He took a step toward me, his voice softening. Amara, baby. This is all a misunderstanding. Blessing is just an employee. Yes, maybe there was a brief indiscretion, but... Stop lying, I interrupted, my voice ice cold. I have photographs, bank records, flight itineraries. Every detail of your betrayal is documented, David. The traditional marriage ceremony in Ghana, the beachfront property, the $380,000 you've hidden, the pregnancy, all of it. He stared at me, reassessing, like a predator recalculating its approach to wounded prey. Then he smiled. That same charming smile that had once made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. Amara, think about what you're doing. 22 years of marriage. Everything we've built together. You want to throw that away? Over what, a midlife mistake? Men stray sometimes. It doesn't mean I don't love you. Love? I laughed bitterly. You don't know the meaning of the word. Love doesn't steal from someone. Love doesn't build an escape plan. Love doesn't create a second family in secret. His charm evaporated, replaced by cold fury. You stupid woman. Do you have any idea what you've done? I had everything planned perfectly. Every detail. And now you've ruined it all with your meddling. Your perfect plan to steal my money and abandon your family? I asked. Yes, I did ruin that. And I'm just getting started. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging painfully into my flesh. Listen to me. You can still fix this. Unfreeze the accounts. Withdraw the divorce filing. Tell the kids it was all a misunderstanding. If you do that, I'll make sure you're taken care of. I looked into the eyes of the man I had once loved beyond reason and saw nothing but a stranger. A dangerous, cornered stranger. Let go of my arm, David, I said calmly. The security cameras are recording everything. The police have already been here once tonight. Do you really want them to return and find you assaulting me? His eyes darted to the new security camera in the corner of the room. He released my arm abruptly. This isn't over, he spat. You think you've won? You have no idea what I'm capable of. Actually, I do, I replied. That's precisely why you're going to lose. He stormed toward the door, then turned back. One last chance, Amara. Call off the lawyers. Unfreeze the accounts, or I will destroy you. I met his gaze without flinching. Goodbye, David. Your court date is next Wednesday. I suggest you find a good lawyer. After he slammed the door behind him, I sank onto the stairs, trembling with delayed shock and fear. I had stood up to him, but his threat lingered in the air. This man, who had lived a double life so successfully for years, was now desperate and angry. And I knew from my years as a nurse that desperate, angry men were capable of terrible things. I called Michael Ossie and reported what had happened. He arranged for a security guard to be posted outside my home for the night and promised to have David followed. Then I called Sarah Chen. He came to the house, I told her. He threatened me. Did you record it? She asked immediately. Yes. The security cameras captured everything. Excellent. We'll add intimidation and threats to our filing. Mrs. Okafor, I don't think you should stay in that house tonight. I thought of my beautiful home, the home I had made with my own hands and heart. The idea of being driven from it by David's threats infuriated me. This is my house, I said firmly. I won't be chased out of it. Michael has arranged security and the police are aware of the situation. Sarah sighed. I understand, but please be careful. Men like your husband, men who've maintained elaborate deceptions, can become extremely dangerous when exposed. After we hung up, I went to our bedroom, the room where this nightmare had begun with a whispered wrong name, and opened my bedside drawer. Inside was the small handgun I had purchased years ago for protection when David traveled. I had taken the required safety courses and kept it securely locked away from our children. I checked that it was loaded, then returned it to the drawer. I didn't expect to need it, but Sarah's warning echoed in my mind. I would not be defenseless in my own home. That night, I slept fitfully, waking at every sound. The security guard Michael had hired checked in hourly, confirming all was quiet. But my mind raced with questions and fears. What would David do next? How far would he go to protect his secret life and stolen money? The morning brought answers, and new dangers. I awoke to multiple missed calls and urgent text messages. My phone had been on silent mode for the night, and now it seemed everyone was trying to reach me at once. Sarah Chen, Michael Ossie, Fatima, and all three of my children. Kofi's message made my blood run cold. Mom, Dad contacted all three of us last night. He says you're having mental health issues, possibly early onset dementia. He's filed for emergency guardianship over you. Call me ASAP. I immediately called Sarah Chen, who answered on the first ring. I was about to come to your house, she said, her voice tight with urgency. Your husband has made a bold countermove. He's filed for emergency guardianship, claiming you're mentally incompetent. He's gathered statements from 3 doctors, all business associates of his, who've signed affidavits stating you've shown signs of paranoid delusions and cognitive decline. But that's absurd, I exclaimed. None of those doctors have examined me. Exactly, which is why this won't ultimately succeed. But it's a clever tactical move. It freezes our divorce proceedings until the competency matter is resolved. And if there's a guardianship hearing first, he could potentially regain control of the finances before our emergency asset freezes are made permanent. The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. David wasn't just trying to hide his affair or protect his money anymore. He was attempting to have me declared mentally incompetent, to strip me of my agency and dignity. What do we do? I asked. my voice steadier than I felt. First, you need an immediate psychological evaluation from a court-approved psychiatrist. I've already scheduled one for 11 a.m. today. Then we counterfile, showing his claims are retaliatory and providing evidence of his threats last night. The security footage is crucial. I need that immediately. As soon as we hung up, I downloaded the security camera footage from the previous night and sent it to Sarah. Then I called my children one by one, reassuring them that I was perfectly sane, explaining David's desperate tactics, and asking them to trust the legal process. "Dad's saying you imagined the whole affair," Kwame said, his young voice confused and hurt. "He says you hired a PI because you're having paranoid episodes. And what do you believe, sweetheart?" I asked gently. A pause, then, "I believe you, Mom. Dad's the one acting crazy, not you." At 10:30 a.m., Fatima arrived to drive me to the psychiatric evaluation. As we backed out of my driveway, I noticed a strange car parked down the street, a man inside seemingly watching my house. "Michael mentioned David hired his own investigators," Fatima explained when I pointed it out. "He's having you followed." The psychiatric evaluation lasted 2 hours. Dr. Eleanor Park, a distinguished older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, conducted a thorough examination of my mental state, cognitive abilities, and emotional health. "Mrs. Okafor," she said as we concluded, "I want to be completely transparent with you. I find absolutely no evidence of dementia, psychosis, or any other condition that would impair your judgment or decision-making capacity. You are under significant stress, which is entirely understandable given the circumstances, but your mental faculties are completely intact." Relief washed over me. "Will you put that in writing for the court?" "Absolutely. I'll prepare a comprehensive report today." "And Mrs. Okafor?" Her expression softened slightly. "What you're experiencing, this type of gaslighting and manipulation, is a form of psychological abuse. It's unfortunately common in high-conflict divorces, especially when one spouse has something significant to hide." As Fatima drove me home, my secure phone rang. "Michael Osei, Mrs. Okafor. We've been monitoring your husband's movements. He went to your lake house this morning with another man. They removed several items and loaded them into a van. I've documented everything with photographs." "What items?" I asked, alarmed. "Artwork, electronics, what looked like financial documents." My operative couldn't get close enough to identify everything without being seen. The lake house contained several valuable African art pieces we had collected over the years, worth approximately $85,000 total. There was also my grandmother's hand-woven ceremonial cloth, a priceless family heirloom that had been passed down for generations. "He's looting assets before they can be cataloged for the divorce," I realized aloud. "Can we stop him?" "I've already notified Attorney Chen. She's seeking additional emergency orders. In the meantime, I've stationed an operative at the property to document any further attempts at removal." When I arrived home, there was a large envelope taped to my front door, the guardianship petition David had filed. Reading his claims made me physically ill. He described me as increasingly paranoid, fabricating elaborate conspiracy theories, and unable to distinguish reality from fantasy. He cited my obsessive delusions about an affair and irrational financial decisions as evidence of my mental decline. 3 affidavits from his doctor. Friends described secondhand observations of my concerning behavior and recommended immediate psychiatric intervention. None had actually examined me or even spoken to me in the past year. The guardianship hearing was scheduled for Friday, just 2 days away. David was moving quickly, hoping to overwhelm me with legal maneuvers before I could effectively respond. Called Sarah Chen and read the petition to her. "This is actually good news," she said. "Surprisingly, how is this possibly good news?" I demanded. "Because it's so blatantly retaliatory and poorly supported that it will likely backfire on him. The timing alone, filing for guardianship immediately after being confronted with evidence of his affair and financial misconduct, is suspicious. Add to that the fact that none of these doctors have actually examined you, plus Dr. Park's clear assessment of your competence, and this looks exactly like what it is, a desperate attempt to discredit you." Her confidence calmed me somewhat, but anxiety still churned in my stomach. What if David's connections and wealth swayed the judge? What if I was declared incompetent before the divorce could proceed? That afternoon, As I was organizing financial documents for Sarah, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Amara. The voice was female, young, with a slight Ghanaian accent. This is Blessing. My hand tightened on the phone. What do you want? To meet, just you and me. There are things you need to know. Things about David that would help your case. It felt like a trap. Why would you help me? A bitter laugh. Because I've learned that David Okafor lies to everyone, including me. Will you meet me or not? Against the advice of both Sarah and Michael, I agreed to meet Blessing at a public cafe downtown. Michael insisted on having one of his operatives nearby, watching for any sign of danger. The woman who walked into the cafe at precisely 4 p.m. was even more beautiful in person than in the surveillance photos. Tall, slender, with flawless skin and carefully styled hair. She wore an expensive maternity dress that showcased her growing belly. She sat across from me, her eyes assessing. You're exactly as David described, dignified, intelligent-looking. He described me to you? I asked, surprised. Of course. You were the obstacle, the first wife who didn't understand him, who held him back. That's always the story, isn't it? Her smile was brittle. The sad thing is, I believed him. Why are we here, Blessing? What do you want? She placed a USB drive on the table. Bank accounts, passwords, details of offshore holdings you don't know about. David has more hidden than your investigator found, much more. I stared at the small device. Why are you giving me this? Blessing caressed her pregnant belly. Because yesterday I learned that there is another woman in Toronto. With another child, a 2-year-old. David has a second secret family, Amara. I'm not special either. The shock must have shown on my face because she laughed bitterly. Yes, that was my reaction too. The great David Okafor playing us all. The traditional marriage ceremony we had in Ghana, he's done it 3 times. Once with you, once with me, once with her. He promised me I would be his only wife after you. He told her the same about me. How did you find out? I asked. I hired my own investigator after he became evasive about our move to Ghana. The property there? It's not even in New Dawn Enterprises' name anymore. He transferred it last month to another shell company I have no connection to. I studied her face. The hurt, the anger, the humiliation. It mirrored what I had felt upon discovering David's betrayal. The child? I asked quietly, nodding toward her belly. Her expression softened slightly. Is his. That much is true. But now I wonder if he ever intended to be a real father, or if this baby was just another way to control me, to ensure my loyalty. I thought of my own children, how David had been an attentive father when they were young, but had grown increasingly distant as they became independent. Had that been his pattern all along, present only when it served his image or purpose? What do you want in return for this? I asked, indicating the USB drive. 2 things. First, I want immunity. Your lawyer won't pursue me for the money David gave me. I'll cooperate fully with your case against him, but I keep what I have. It seemed reasonable. And second, information. Everything your investigator found about the Toronto woman. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. I considered her offer. The information she was providing could be invaluable in the divorce proceedings, and her testimony about David's multiple secret marriages would destroy his credibility with any judge. I'll need to consult with my lawyer, I said finally, but I think we can work together. Blessing nodded, then fixed me with a penetrating stare. You know he's dangerous, right? When David feels trapped, he becomes unpredictable. He's threatened me already, I acknowledged. It will get worse, she warned. When I confronted him about Toronto, he grabbed me here. She touched her throat. Only for a second, but I saw something in his eyes I've never seen before. A chill ran through me. Are you afraid of him? Yes, she said simply. And you should be too. As Blessing stood to leave, she hesitated. He told me you were cold, materialistic, that you didn't understand his dreams or support his ambitions. But sitting here with you, I can see that was a lie too. You seem like a good person, Amara. So do you, I replied, surprised to find I meant it. We both deserved better than David Okafor. That night, after consulting with Sarah Chen, who cautiously approved the alliance with Blessing while insisting on verifying the USB's information, I sat in my home office reviewing the files Blessing had provided. What I found was staggering. Additional bank accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland containing nearly $1.2 million. Investment properties in 3 countries, a yacht registered in Panama, and most shocking of all, evidence that David had been systematically diverting funds from his medical supply company for at least 5 years. Embezzlement that could result in criminal charges. This wasn't just a husband hiding money from his wife. This was potentially criminal financial fraud on a significant scale. I was so absorbed in the documents that I didn't immediately hear the glass breaking downstairs. When the sound registered, I froze, listening intently. Another crash, followed by heavy footsteps. Someone was in my house. I quickly turned off my computer screen and moved silently to my bedroom, retrieving the handgun from my bedside drawer. Then I called 911, whispering my address and the nature of the emergency. The dispatcher advised me to hide and wait for officers, who were already on the way. Instead, I positioned myself at the top of the stairs, gun aimed downward, and called out in a steady voice, "I'm armed, and the police have been called." "Leave now." Silence, then a familiar laugh. "Are you going to shoot me, Amara? In our home?" David stepped into view at the bottom of the stairs, his face distorted with rage and something else, a recklessness that terrified me more than his anger. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, keeping the gun aimed at him. "Getting what's mine," he slurred. I realized he was drunk or on something, his movements unsteady, his eyes unfocused. "You've taken everything from me. My money, my business, my reputation, my children." "You did that to yourself," I replied, fighting to keep my voice calm. "Leave now, David, the police are coming." He took a step up the stairs. "You think I'm afraid of the police? You think I can't explain a domestic dispute? A mentally unstable wife waving a gun around?" Another step. "You know what the judge will see at our hearing? A dangerous, paranoid woman who needs to be controlled, who imagines affairs and conspiracies, who threatens her loving husband with a firearm." I tightened my grip on the gun. "Don't come any closer. I will defend myself." He smiled, a chilling, empty smile. "No, you won't. You don't have it in you, Amara. You've always been weak, compliant. That's why it was so easy to fool you for years." He took another step upward. He was halfway up the stairs now, his movements erratic but determined. "You know what's in our bedroom?" he asked, his voice menacing. "The evidence that's going to destroy you. Your medication, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, prescriptions I had filled yesterday, your journal filled with paranoid ramblings, your suicide note." Cold fear gripped me. He was planting evidence to support his guardianship claim, to make it appear I was mentally unstable and possibly suicidal. "The police will see everything," he continued. "They'll have no choice but to commit you for evaluation. And by the time that's sorted out, I'll have regained control of our accounts. The divorce will be dismissed. You'll have nothing." In that moment, I saw the true David Okafor, not the charming man I had married, not the successful businessman, but a calculating predator who had targeted me for decades, using me while secretly building escape routes. "Last chance. Amara," he said, taking another step upward. "Put down the gun. Tell the police it was a misunderstanding. Withdraw the divorce, or I will destroy you completely." The sound of sirens in the distance seemed to fuel his desperation. He lunged up several stairs at once. "Stop," I shouted. "I will shoot." He laughed again, that hollow sound that barely resembled the laugh I had once loved. "No, you won't. You could never hurt me. That's your weakness." As he reached the top of the stairs, hands outstretched toward me, I fired a warning shot into the ceiling. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. David froze, genuine shock on his face. Then his expression contorted with fury. "You crazy bitch!" He charged at me. I stepped backward, still holding the gun level. "Stop, David, please!" But he didn't stop. As his hands reached for my throat, survival instinct took over. I fired again, this time at his leg. David screamed, collapsing to the floor, clutching his thigh where blood was already soaking through his pants. "You shot me. You actually shot me. I warned you," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I told you to stop." Blue lights flashed through the windows as police cars arrived. Moments later, officers rushed in, guns drawn, responding to both my 911 call and reports of gunshots. The next few hours passed in a blur of statements, paramedics, evidence collection. I explained how David had broken in, threatened me, and attacked me. The security cameras had captured his entry and his ascent up the stairs. His blood alcohol level was well over the legal limit, and officers found a bag containing the evidence he had planned to plant, medications prescribed in my name by one of the same doctors who had signed his guardianship affidavit, a fabricated journal, and a forged suicide note. Most damning of all, they found a notebook in his car with detailed plans for framing me, calculations of drug dosages that would render me temporarily incoherent, names of psychiatric facilities that might hold me for extended evaluation, and notes on how to liquidate our remaining assets while I was incapacitated. David was treated for the gunshot wound, which was not life-threatening, and then arrested for breaking and entering, attempted assault, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The guardianship hearing was postponed indefinitely, and Sarah Chen filed additional motions documenting David's elaborate attempt to frame me. As dawn broke, I sat in my kitchen with Fatima, who had rushed over as soon as she heard. I felt numb, exhausted, yet somehow clearer than I had in weeks. The man I had loved for half my life had tried to destroy me, not just financially or emotionally, but completely. He had been willing to have me committed, drugged, stripped of my autonomy, all to protect his deceptions and his money. "You could have died tonight," Fatima said quietly, "if you hadn't been prepared. I thought of the gun I had purchased years ago, the one David had mocked me for keeping. A gun in the house is more dangerous for you than any intruder," he had said. How wrong he had been. I never thought it would come to this, I admitted. Even after everything I discovered, I didn't think he would physically harm me. Fatima reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Men like David, men who lead double lives for years, they're more dangerous than we realize. Their entire identity is built on control and deception. When that's threatened, they become capable of anything." As the sun rose over my beautiful home, the home that had nearly become the scene of my undoing, I made a silent vow. David Okafor would never hurt me or my family again. Whatever it took, whatever I had to sacrifice, I would ensure that justice was served. The days following the break-in brought a flurry of legal activity and shocking revelations. David was released on bail with an ankle monitor and a restraining order preventing him from coming within 500 feet of me or our home. The guardianship petition was dismissed after Dr. Park's evaluation conclusively established my mental competence, and the divorce proceedings resumed with even greater urgency. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source, Blessing Mensah. After learning about David's arrest, she contacted Sarah Chen directly, offering to provide sworn testimony about his financial dealings, his plans to leave the country, and his pattern of deceptive relationships. The information on the USB drive she had given me proved legitimate, leading to the discovery of offshore accounts containing millions of dollars. "Mrs. Okafor," Sarah called to inform me, "Blessing has provided us with something extraordinary, a recording of David discussing his financial arrangements with someone named James Teta, apparently his financial advisor in Ghana. On this recording, David explicitly discusses hiding marital assets, creating false business expenses, and establishing shell companies to funnel money away from your shared enterprises." "Is that admissible in court?" I asked. "Absolutely. He was speaking in a public place, a restaurant in Ghana, where there's no expectation of privacy. This is extremely strong evidence of financial fraud. But the recording contains something even more disturbing, a casual discussion of what David called his exit strategy. If she becomes problematic, there are ways to handle that," David could be heard saying. "Medical emergencies can be arranged. Accidents happen." The implication was chilling. David had been considering eliminating me as an obstacle long before I discovered his affair. The attack at our house hadn't been a desperate, impulsive act. It was the implementation of a contingency plan he'd developed months or even years earlier. Sarah immediately forwarded the recording to the district attorney's office, resulting in additional charges against David: conspiracy to commit assault, criminal financial fraud, and embezzlement. His bail was revoked, and he was taken back into custody. When news of David's arrest on these expanded charges became public, another woman came forward, Vanessa Lee, a business associate from Toronto. She provided evidence that David had maintained a relationship with her for 4 years, had a 2-year-old son with her, and had conducted another traditional marriage ceremony. Like me, like Blessing, Vanessa had been led to believe she was special, the true love of David's life, held back only by his entanglements with other women. "It's like he had a script," Vanessa told me when we spoke by video call. The same promises, the same complaints about his current situation, the same vision of a future together once he was free. As more of David's financial dealings came to light, the web of deception proved even more extensive than I had imagined. He had been systematically embezzling from his medical supply company for nearly 7 years, creating phantom vendors and consultants who received substantial payments for services never rendered. Those funds were routed through a complex network of shell companies before ending up in his private, offshore accounts. The total amount he had diverted exceeded $3.8 million, money that should have been part of our marital assets, money that belonged in part to his business partners and investors. One of those investors, Malcolm Jenkins, a longtime friend who had provided seed money for David's company, filed separate criminal charges after learning of the embezzlement. I trusted him completely, Malcolm told me when he called to express his shock and sympathy. We all did. David was so convincing, so detailed in his explanations. No one thought to question his financial reports. The criminal investigation expanded beyond the divorce proceedings, with federal authorities now examining David's business practices for evidence of tax fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. Meanwhile, I focused on protecting what remained of our legitimate assets. The lake house, which David had attempted to loot before his arrest, was secured with new locks and a security system. Our family home was formally removed from any potential property division, with the court recognizing it as my separate property due to David's criminal actions. Most importantly, I ensured our children's educational funds remained untouched. Kofi, Nia, and Kwame would not have their futures compromised by their father's crimes. Throughout this period, I maintained my position as nursing director at the hospital, drawing strength from my work and colleagues. Many expressed shock at the revelations about David, who had been seen as a pillar of our community, a success story, a devoted family man. "I never would have guessed," my assistant director Judith said. "He always seemed so perfect." "That was the problem," I replied. "No one is perfect. I should have questioned it long ago." 6 weeks after David's arrest, I received a call from the district attorney's office. David wanted to meet with me. He was offering a full confession and cooperation with authorities in exchange for a plea deal, but he insisted on speaking with me first. Sarah Chen advised strongly against the meeting. "He's manipulative and desperate. Nothing good can come from this," Michael Osei agreed. "Men like David don't change. This is just another angle he's working, but something in me needed closure, needed to look David in the eyes one last time, and understand how the man I had loved could have betrayed me so completely. I'll meet him, I decided, in the jail, with guards present and my lawyer beside me. The man who sat across from me in the jail's meeting room barely resembled the David Okafor I had known. His expensive suits were replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His confident posture was now hunched and defensive. The charming smile that had once made my heart race was nowhere to be seen. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice subdued. "I didn't think you would." "Why did you want to see me, David?" He studied my face, perhaps looking for weakness or lingering affection. He found neither. I wanted to explain, he said finally. "To make you understand." "Understand what? Your affairs? Your theft? Your plan to abandon your family? Or your plan to have me committed? Or worse, if I discovered the truth?" He flinched at my direct questions. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you," I laughed bitterly. "You planned to steal millions of dollars from me, marry another woman, father children with multiple partners, and flee the country. How exactly did you think that wouldn't hurt me? You don't understand how much pressure I was under," he said, a hint of the old David, charming, persuasive, emerging. The business was struggling. Competitors were undercutting us. I needed to secure our future. Our future? Or yours with Blessing? Or was it your future with Vanessa and your son in Toronto? His eyes widened slightly. "You know about Vanessa." "I know everything, David. Every account. Every woman. Every lie. What I don't know, what I still can't comprehend is why. We had a good life. We had enough money. We had beautiful children. Why wasn't that enough for you? For a moment, something like genuine emotion flickered across his face. I don't know, he admitted quietly. It started small, a separate account as a safety net. Then another woman who made me feel important, powerful. Then more accounts, more women, more lies to cover the previous lies. It became a game almost, seeing how much I could get away with. A game, I repeated, disgust evident in my voice. Our marriage was a game to you. Not at first, he insisted. In the beginning, I loved you, Amara. I really did. But then, I don't know. I changed. Or maybe I was always this way and just hid it better. I studied the man before me, this stranger who had shared my bed for 22 years, who had fathered my children, who had once been the center of my world. I searched for any trace of the David I had loved. There was nothing. I'm not here for your confession or your justifications, I said finally. I'm here to tell you that your manipulations are over. You will never control me or harm me again. You will never touch another dollar of my money. You will face justice for what you've done. To me, to our children, to your business partners, and to all the other women you've deceived. He leaned forward, his expression hardening. You think you've won? Even with me in here, you've lost everything. Our marriage, our reputation, your perfect life. We're both destroyed, Amara. I smiled then, a genuine smile that seemed to unnerve him more than anger would have. That's where you're wrong, David. I haven't lost everything. I've lost an illusion, a marriage that wasn't real, a husband who was living a lie. But I've gained something far more valuable, the truth, and my freedom. I stood to leave, then paused. One last question. That night in our bed when you called me Blessing, was it really a mistake? Or was it deliberate, a test to see how I'd react? Or maybe even a way to begin unraveling our marriage on your terms? His eyes met mine, and for once I saw no calculation there, just weariness, and perhaps a flicker of the truth. It was a mistake, he admitted. A stupid, careless mistake after months of juggling lies. When I realized what I'd done, I panicked. I thought I could manipulate you, gaslight you into believing it never happened. I never expected you to investigate so thoroughly. You underestimated me, I said simply. That was your biggest mistake. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Amara, wait. I need you to tell her something. I paused, not turning back. Tell who what? Blessing. I need you to tell her that I really did love her, that it wasn't all a lie with her. I looked back at him, this pitiful man still trying to manipulate emotions, still trying to control the narrative. Tell her yourself. David, I'm not your messenger anymore. The legal proceedings against David Okafor unfolded over the next 7 months in both criminal and civil courts. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Financial records, sworn testimonies from multiple witnesses, the recorded conversations about hiding assets, and most damning of all, his own confession to prosecutors once he realized the extent of the case against him. In exchange for a reduced sentence, David provided detailed information about his offshore accounts, business fraud schemes, and financial manipulation. He pled guilty to multiple felony counts: embezzlement, wire fraud, tax evasion, and attempted assault. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who had seen countless cases of financial crime, was particularly harsh in her sentencing. Mr. Okafor, she said, looking down at him from the bench, you have violated not just the law, but the most fundamental trust between spouses, business partners, and community members. Your crimes were not committed in desperation or momentary weakness, but through years of calculated deception for personal gain and gratification. I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 8 years. David showed no emotion as the sentence was pronounced. He had already retreated behind a mask of indifference, his final defense against the consequences of his actions. The divorce proceedings, which had continued parallel to the criminal case, concluded with a comprehensive judgment in my favor. All marital assets were awarded to me, including the family home, the lake house, retirement accounts, and David's share in his company, which was now being restructured under the management of his honest business partners. The court also ordered the repatriation of offshore funds, though recovering all the hidden money would likely take years of international legal work. In total, assets worth approximately $5.2 million were returned to my control, far more than I had known existed during our marriage. Blessing Mensa gave birth to a healthy baby boy 2 months after David's sentencing. In an unexpected turn, we maintained a cautious friendship. She named me as godmother to her son, a gesture of reconciliation that touched me deeply. With her cooperation in the case against David, she was allowed to keep the assets he had given her, approximately $420,000, which she used to start her own business importing African textiles. Vanessa Lee remained in Toronto with her young son, establishing a cordial long-distance relationship with my children, who were curious about their half-brother. She too had been a victim of David's manipulation, and I couldn't find it in my heart to blame her for believing his lies. My own healing was a gradual, sometimes painful process. I underwent therapy to address the trauma of betrayal and to rebuild my sense of self after decades of living with deception. I rediscovered passions I had set aside during my marriage: painting, community organizing, and traditional Nigerian cooking that connected me to my roots. Most importantly, I rebuilt my relationships with my children, who struggled with their father's crimes and imprisonment. Kofi, initially the most angry, eventually found a path to acceptance, if not forgiveness. Nia, who had always been closest to her father, required the most support as she reconciled the loving dad she remembered with the criminal he had proven to be. Kwame, the youngest, channeled his confusion and hurt into advocacy work, joining a support group for children of incarcerated parents. 1 year after David's sentencing, I received an unexpected call from Sarah Chen. "Mrs. Okafor, there's been an interesting development. A publisher has approached me about your story. They believe it would make a compelling book, a memoir about financial deception, betrayal, and ultimately empowerment. They're offering a significant advance." I considered the proposal. My story, painful as it was, might help other women recognize the warning signs I had missed, might encourage them to question, to investigate, to trust their instincts when something felt wrong. "I'll do it," I decided. "But on one condition: a portion of the proceeds goes to a foundation for victims of financial abuse." The resulting book, called by another name, My Husband's Double Life and My Path to Freedom, became an unexpected bestseller. I found myself speaking at women's conferences, appearing on television programs, and counseling other women going through similar ordeals. 3 years after David's imprisonment, I returned to Nigeria for the first time in decades, a pilgrimage to reconnect with my heritage and to introduce my children to their extended family. Standing in my ancestral village, surrounded by the strong women of my lineage, I felt a profound sense of coming home to myself. My grandmother, nearly a century old but still sharp-minded, held my face between her weathered hands and said in our native tongue, "I see the strength of our ancestors in your eyes now. The pain has polished you like a precious stone." She was right. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead revealed a core of resilience I hadn't known I possessed. In losing the marriage I thought was perfect, I had gained an authentic life built on truth and self-knowledge. 5 years after David called me by another woman's name, I sat on the patio of my lake house, now truly mine alone, watching the sunset over the water. My phone rang. Michael Osei, the private investigator who had helped uncover David's deceptions. "Mrs. Okafor," he greeted me warmly. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, Michael. And after all this time, please call me Amara." "Amara, then. I'm calling because I've just completed another case. A woman whose situation reminded me so much of yours. I gave her your book, but she's struggling to believe she can rebuild as you did. I wondered if you might speak with her. I thought of that terrible night when David had whispered another woman's name, when my world had first begun to crack. I thought of the fear, the pain, the uncertainty that had followed. And I thought of how far I had come since then. "Of course I'll speak with her," I said. "Tell her from me that this isn't the end of her story. It's the beginning of a new one." As I hung up, I gazed out at the lake, calm now after the storm that had passed through earlier. Like that lake, I too had weathered my storm. The surface had been violently disturbed, but the depths remained strong, enduring. David Okafor had called me by another woman's name and begged me not to tell her about us. In doing so, he had inadvertently set me free from a life of beautiful illusions. The pain had been excruciating, the journey difficult, but the woman I had become was stronger, wiser, and truly authentic in a way I had never been before. That woman, the real Amara Okafor, was the most precious discovery of all. 7 years after David's incarceration, I stood in the arrivals area of the international airport, a bouquet of flowers in my hand. My heart raced with anticipation as passengers began streaming through the gates. "Mom!" Nia's voice rang out. She rushed toward me, followed by a tall, handsome young man I recognized from video calls, Adebayo, her fiancé. I embraced my daughter tightly, then extended my hand to Adebayo. Instead of shaking it, he bowed respectfully in the traditional Nigerian manner. "Mama Okafor," he greeted me formally. "It is an honor to finally meet you in person." Nia beamed as she watched our interaction. At 25, she had blossomed into a confident young woman, completing her medical degree and finding love with Adebayo, a Nigerian-born engineer she had met during her volunteer work in Lagos. "The honor is mine," I replied warmly. "Welcome to our home." As we drove from the airport, Nia chatted excitedly about their wedding plans. They wanted a ceremony that honored both American and Nigerian traditions, bringing together the two worlds that had shaped her identity. "Dad wrote to me," she said suddenly, her voice growing serious. "He asked to attend the wedding." I told him no. I glanced at her, noting the resolve in her expression. "Are you sure that's what you want?" She nodded firmly. "I've forgiven him, Mom, for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want him in my life again, or in my special day." Her clarity impressed me. It had taken years of therapy and reflection for her to reach this point, to separate the loving father of her childhood memories from the man whose deceptions had nearly destroyed our family. "I support whatever you decide," I assured her. "This is your day." At home, preparations for the engagement party were underway. Fatima had organized everything, transforming my backyard into a celebration space with Nigerian fabrics, tropical flowers, and twinkling lights. Kofi arrived with his wife, Maya, and their 1-year-old daughter, Zara, my first grandchild. At 27, Kofi had established himself as a successful software engineer and devoted father. The anger that had once consumed him after David's betrayal had mellowed into a determined focus on creating a different kind of family legacy. Kwame, now 22 and in his final year of college, came with his boyfriend, Tyler. My youngest had perhaps been the most resilient of my children, channeling his experience into studying psychology and working with families affected by incarceration. As I watched my family gather, my children with their chosen partners, my granddaughter toddling between guests, my dear friends who had supported me through the darkest times, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. This was the true wealth David had never understood or valued, the authentic connections between people who loved each other honestly. The engagement celebration was joyous, filled with music, dancing, and traditional Nigerian food I had prepared with Nia and Adebayo's help. As the evening progressed, Kofi clinked his glass for attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," he announced, "to my incredible mother, Amara Okafor." The gathering fell silent, all eyes turning to me. 7 years ago, our family faced a crisis that could have destroyed us, Kofi continued. But our mother showed us what true strength looks like. Not the false strength of deception and control, but the authentic power that comes from truth, resilience, and love. To Mom, Nia joined in, raising her glass, who taught us that sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. To Mom, Kwame added, who showed us that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, and that boundaries are a form of self-love. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at my beautiful children, now adults who had not only survived our family trauma but had grown wiser and more compassionate because of it. Later that evening, as the party wound down and guests departed, I found myself sitting alone on my patio, enjoying the peaceful aftermath. Fatima joined me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "To new beginnings," she said, passing me a glass. "To old friends who make them possible," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Fatima spoke. Have you heard from James recently? James Nwosu had entered my life unexpectedly 3 years earlier, a widowed Nigerian professor who had attended one of my book talks. Our friendship had gradually evolved into something deeper, though we were taking things very slowly. He calls every day, I admitted, a smile playing at my lips. He wants to come for Nia's wedding. And how do you feel about that? I considered the question carefully. After David's betrayal, I had been certain I would never trust a man again, never risk my heart or my peace. But James was different, thoughtful, transparent, respectful of my boundaries. He understood my caution and had never pushed for more than I was ready to give. I think I'm ready, I said finally. Not for remarriage or anything dramatic, but for companionship, for the possibility of love again, a different kind of love. Wiser, more clear-eyed, Fatima squeezed my hand. You deserve that, Amara. You've rebuilt everything else in your life. Why not your heart, too? The next morning, I took my granddaughter to the garden while her parents slept in. Zara toddled among the flowers, her small face alight with wonder at each new discovery. Look, Nana, she exclaimed, pointing to a butterfly resting on a blossom. Pretty. Yes, it is, I agreed, kneeling beside her. And do you know something amazing about butterflies? They start as something completely different, a caterpillar. Then they go through a very difficult time in a cocoon, where everything seems dark and confusing. But when they come out, they're beautiful and free. Zara looked at me with solemn eyes, absorbing this information with the seriousness only a child can bring to such moments. Like you? She asked innocently. I laughed in surprise. What do you mean, little one? Daddy says you were in a dark place, but came out strong and beautiful, she recited, clearly repeating something she had overheard. Tears pricked my eyes at the simple wisdom in her words. Yes, something like that. As Zara returned to her exploration of the garden, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. From the night David had called me by another woman's name to this peaceful morning with my granddaughter, from betrayal to rebuilding, from pain to purpose, the butterfly that had captivated Zara took flight, its wings catching the morning light as it soared upward. I watched its ascent with a sense of kinship. Like that butterfly, I had emerged from my cocoon of pain transformed, not unmarked by my experience, but beautiful because of it, because of the strength I had found in surviving, in reclaiming my life, in refusing to be defined by someone else's betrayal. That evening, I called James. When he answered, his warm voice brought a smile to my face. Amara, he greeted me. I was just thinking about you. I'd like you to come for the wedding, I said without preamble. As my guest, his momentary silence spoke volumes. We both understood what this invitation meant. A step forward, an opening of a door I had kept firmly closed for years. I would be honored, he said finally. Truly honored. After we hung up, I walked through my home, the home that had once been the setting for my perfect-seeming marriage, now transformed into a sanctuary of truth and authenticity. Every room had been redecorated, every space reclaimed as fully mine. In the study that had once been David's domain, I had created a workspace for my advocacy and writing. On the wall hung framed copies of my book in multiple languages, along with photographs of women I had helped, women who had found their own paths to freedom after betrayal. On my desk sat a small wooden carving grandmother had given me during my visit to Nigeria, a phoenix rising from ashes, a traditional symbol of rebirth. Beside it lay the outline for my second book, tentatively titled, After the Fall, Rebuilding Your Life When the Unthinkable Happens. I ran my fingers over the carved phoenix, remembering my grandmother's words as she had pressed it into my hands. Our women have always known how to rise from the flames others have set. That night, as I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror, the silver threading through my dark hair, the laugh lines around my eyes, the quiet confidence in my posture. At 52, I was not the same woman who had once believed so completely in her perfect marriage. I was someone stronger, wiser, more authentic. David had called me by another woman's name and begged me not to tell her about us. In that moment of carelessness, he had revealed the first thread of a deception that, when pulled, had unraveled our entire life together. But in losing what I thought I had found something infinitely more valuable, myself. My true self, unburdened by illusion, uncompromised by deception. As I turned out the light, I whispered a prayer of gratitude, not for what had happened, but for the strength I had found in its aftermath. For the beautiful life I had created from the ashes of betrayal, for the woman I had become, Amara Okafor. My name, my true name, the only name that mattered. Hello everyone, this is Amara Okafor. If my story has touched you or helped you in any way, please like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories of resilience and transformation. Remember that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to choose our own paths forward. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it gives you strength for yours. Until next time, keep rising, keep believing in yourself, and never let someone else's betrayal define your worth.